All right, let's hit the speed bag here on Making the Rounds. Jim Basquil alongside Brian Campbell. Brian, on the Mayweather-Maidana undercard, Amir earned a unanimous decision over Luis Collazo. Has Khan, though, put his chin issues behind him?
Jim, he probably never fully will, and he's probably always going to be a candidate to have trouble with the bigger punchers in the division, but this went about as good as it could go for Khan against Collazo. Look, he looked big at 147 pounds, carried the muscle well, sat down on his punches, and Jim, just at that breaking point, late in that fight, when he got hit by Collazo, it looked like things might fall apart. Gathered himself, scored 2 late knockdowns to put him away. Look, he's put himself in position for a big fight. Very good performance.
He dug deep, dug deep. Dan, Adrien Broner also won a unanimous decision on Saturday's undercard in beating Carlos Molina. Post-fight, he called out Manny Pacquiao. What are the chances that that fight is made in the future?
I mean, listen, I can't blame Adrien Broner for doing that. First of all, remember, he dropped down to 140 pounds from welterweight for this fight. There has been talk from the Pacquiao camp that Pacquiao may also drop down to 140 pounds in the future, depending on what comes up for him, to sort of open up the landscape for more opponents. Now, would I like to see Manny Pacquiao take on a guy like Adrien Broner? Of course. But, you know, we know, and we've talked about many times on Making the Rounds, there are those issues that are remaining at the moment between Golden Boy and Top Rank. And that usually means that those fights don't happen, particularly one that would be on this level.
Speaking of, Dan, you wrote about the growing rift between Golden Boy's Richard Schaefer and Oscar De La Hoya, with the fallout possibly changing the landscape of the entire sport. How so?
Oscar De La Hoya and Bob Arum have had a very up and down relationship for many years. Right now, they actually have made peace. They visited with each other in Los Angeles in the recent days, and both of them say that they are okay with each other in terms of on a personal level, and they believe it could lead to them doing business together in the future. One of the issues, one of many issues that are standing between Oscar, the president of Golden Boy, and one of the founders of the company that's named after him, and Richard Schaefer, another one of the co-founders who was the chief executive officer of the company, they do not see eye to eye on that. Schaefer has tried to do business with Bob Arum many times, and he has had a lot of problems with that, says it's not worth it, refuses to do business with Bob. That's his prerogative. And by the way, Bob's not exactly jumping up and down to do business with Schaefer either. They work with many fighters that we've talked about in this program many times that are in the stable of Al Heyman, the powerful manager and advisor. They are not, however, on promotional contracts with Golden Boy. Oscar has a problem with that. Schaefer says he's got it under control. And ultimately what it may lead to is Richard Schaefer leaving the company. If that happens, that is going to change the landscape of the business, because although Oscar is there, the guy that runs the business, that makes the deals, that does the work, that's Richard Schaefer. And if he leaves, that means Golden Boy is going to be in a much weaker position, because Schaefer will not be there, and very likely those Al Heyman boxers, bye-bye, will be working and fighting for some other promoter. And there you'd have a big, big change in what's happening in boxing.
All right, I'm on board with Oscar, by the way. Schaefer, get out and make these fights. Lightweight titleist Terence Crawford and interim titleist Crawford-Gamboa will meet June 28th in Omaha, Nebraska. Brian, you have our Twitter question. John Chandler asking, I'm fairly excited about this fight. Who you got?
Well, Jim, I like this fight, too. I'm pretty excited about it because essentially it's a crossroads fight between two slick boxers. You got Crawford, the guy on the way up. Gamboa, the guy who's maybe 3 years removed from a big win, but he's still got that unbeaten record. Ultimately, Jim, I think you got to favor Crawford, but it comes down to which Gamboa we're going to see. If he can dial back the Uriorkis of old. I'm ready.
Tweet your questions to @ESPN Boxing or @BCampbellESPN using hashtag ESPN Rounds, and we will provide the answers. But that's all our time. Thanks to Dan Rafael and Brian Campbell. I'm Jim Basquil. We are Making the Rounds right here on the boxing page of ESPN.com.